I was highly skeptical of the soft God of War Norse reboot. I'm always willing to give something a shot, but taking the fast and frenetic combat of the original series and slowing it down to focus on a father and son relationship? It's a bold and risky move. One that paid off in spades. With its muted intro of gathering wood, it's immediately clear that God of War is moving in a new direction. The pacing, score, and the voice work are a hat tip at the level of effort that Santa Monica put into this labor of love, and can only be described as meticulous. Before you chop your first undead grunt in half, the table is set for a personal journey intertwined with an epic quest. Yes, you actually get both. I've jokingly referred to the project as Dad of War since it was revealed, but that light ribbing slowly became more of a term of endearment as I wrapped myself around the narrative. Kratos and his son Atreus have a tumultuous relationship at the start, and although you can guess where the setup is going, the way it gets there is organic. It's a little tough for me to truly reconcile Kratos' new turn from murderous asshole to stern father, but some of that history is addressed, and it's strongly hinted that the rest will make its way into the fold eventually. Atreus worms his way into combat of the game's puzzles, mostly propelled by a square button prompt that initiates actions and demands him to fire arrows at enemies. I'll be the first to admit that I was wary of the whole familial angle, but Atreus, at his worst at the absolute start of the tale, is merely a smartass. Very quickly, he starts to come into his own in a way that doesn't feel forced, and roughly 5 hours in, he's a badass in training that starts actively participating in combat with the player. Far too often, warts in any form of media can screw up the kid angle, but a kid that can summon spirit wolves, tot smack on Kratos, and choke out Norse zombies sure beats the hell out of most video game companions. What starts off as a semi-grounded affair, minus some quick bouts with the undead, a few trolls, and a god, soon gets otherworldly. If the narrative isn't moving along, there's a subtle level of world building going on, frequently spouted in sections I call story time, when the player is either rowing down a stream or walking toward a key destination. The heavy-hitting moments, including one oh hell yeah scene, are few and far between, which is a good thing, as the pacing is even-keeled. Without giving you any details, suffice to say this is not a self-contained story. Progression isn't chapter-based, as the discovery of new areas is seamlessly linked. For the critical path, you're moving from set piece to set piece, some of which are labyrinthine caves or quasi-large open zones, and then eventually you trigger a cutscene, which are nicely done with the in-game engine, or leap down from a ledge of no return. But after that individual bit is done, you're free to come back and explore again, uncovering new secrets, sometimes the items you picked up later in the story. There's a legitimate endgame here after the credits roll, involving multiple optional areas, challenges, and bosses. The campaign took me roughly 20 hours to best, and I wrapped up every major quest minus a few collectibles in around 35. Shortly into the fray, you'll get a fast travel item that works at specific doorways. It's a great compromise because while there is some light bloat, the map constantly reminds you of missed riches and collectibles, it never reaches gargantuan radio tower levels. I'll refrain from making direct comparisons, but with a bevy of shortcuts there's a clear amount of From Software influence afoot. But enough about how much God of War strays from the path of the original. You might be asking, can you still rip apart wolves and juggle fools with combos? The answer is, sure. At the start, you'll be kitted out with Kratos' Leviathan axe, which can be recalled after thrown and used in base light or heavy attacks. Eventually, you'll unlock 2 magic slots, which are basically old combo abilities now tied to a cooldown, and you'll earn new skills and light combos through experience points. Early on, the limited amount of moves at your disposal aren't as flashy as you'd expect. Calling back your axe is very cool at first, and even offers an additional layer of strategy. It's incorporated into many puzzles, but it does get old. It would have been a lot more effective of a gimmick if you could recall it while running, jumping, and so on to encourage more locomotion. As it stands, you have to wait until a late upgrade to recall it quickly, and even then, it's in a limited fashion. In case you're wondering, quick time events are mostly out, with the exception of the occasional circle button mashing during key moments. Your bread and butter is using a heavy attack as a launcher and then juggling with light blows, and peppering in arrows from Atreus. A quick tap for a smooth dodge and a double tap for rolling is a nice touch, and my favorite aspect of combat is micromanaging Atreus while Kratos is animation locked. You can also manipulate your abilities in several cool ways, like linking them to a talisman that resets their cooldowns to create new builds. Despite these nuances, at first, I was worried. Initially, combat is clunkier than you're used to in a refined God of War. That's because the original trilogy contains some of the finest action mechanics of the past few decades, and it doesn't mean that the new PlayStation 4 iteration is by any means subpar. God of War also has more RPG elements now. Gear can be crafted or purchased after acquiring the appropriate materials, and it has a World of Warcraft rarity level of green, blue, purple, and gold. Kratos can level up by equipping better gear, and has a full stat line that can be min-maxed or evenly spread. It completely depends on what you want your playstyle to be and the kinds of gems you socket. Some of this begets grinding, especially later in the game as you're scrounging for upgrades, but it's by no means required to see the end of the tale. As always, swift dodging and a penchant for invincibility windows will get you past all the game's challenges. Don't think that Santa Monica put all their effort into dialogue and drama, as God of War maintains these same bonkers level boss fights and set pieces, all of which are presented in the stunning in-game engine that features a hell of a draw distance. Environmental destruction helps gives fights scale, and the new engine is constantly trying to push the envelope. I was hanging on by a thread in what feels like nearly every battle, which speaks to the balanced team's talent on a technical level too. Lastly, a bit of housekeeping, as I know there's a lot of purists out there. The medium difficulty setting feels pretty on point, and there's a hard and very hard setting to mess around with from the start. You can also swap to easy, medium, or hard whenever you want. Very hard, however, is a take it or leave it kind of thing, that locks you from changing it. God of War is a different game for a new era of the medium. While I'm a sucker for more frantic, arcadey action, there are plenty of studios left carrying on that legacy. Unless something catastrophic happens to Sony Santa Monica, there's more story to tell, and I hope the exact same team is able to tell it. But for more written reviews from Chris Carter and other talented staff, be sure to head on over to Destructoid.com.